Welcome, welcome. Tap the screen, share the live. We're just going to get started here in a few minutes. Just waiting for everybody to jump in here. So, all right. Welcome, 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 everyone. All right. Hey, Dave, Darcia, welcome. All right. So, everyone, happy Valentine's Day, first of all. I hope you had a great day, that you were able to get in whatever self-care, self-love, love with your significant other, whatever it is that you did today. I hope that it brought you that sense of joy, that sense of peace. All right, so today we're going to talk about a couple of different things. We're going to talk about transformation and that whole process. And we're also going to talk about healing family relationships. Hey Jack, welcome. Welcome everyone. Tap the screen, share the live. This helps me reach more people to be able to offer them my experience, strength, and hope in order to help heal past trauma. And like I said, today we're going to be talking about transformations, and we're also going to be talking about healing family issues, okay? Because if you grew up in an environment like mine, you would probably have quite a few different family issues, fights, people not talking to each other, disagreements, all those kind of things. And it can be challenging to heal these things. And even as you're going through some of these things, there may be a point where you actually have to take a step back as part of your own healing. And I want to be able to share some tips and strategies of how you can do both, take care of yourself, and also keep your family relationships intact as well. Okay, so before we get into that, I want to talk about the whole process of transformation, because I found it a little bit amusing. Having been through transformations many times myself, people don't talk about a lot of the challenges of it. Everybody's like, you imagine like, I had this like visual today when I was kind of going through some meditations, and I just started to crack up because all I could see is a bunch of little caterpillars all sitting around, and they're kind of looking up at this butterfly, and it's like, oh wow, we want to be a butterfly too. Can you show us how to transform? And the butterfly's like, yeah, sure, I can show you how to transform. And they're like, oh, okay, just sign up and we'll walk you through that transformation process. And the caterpillars are all excited. They're like, yeah, we're going to transform. We're going to be able to fly like a butterfly. We're going to be so beautiful, so pretty and everything. And it's like that they start marching these little caterpillars down the line, and it's like, okay, so the first thing that you're going to have to do is build yourself this little cocoon to isolate yourself completely from everybody else, and then we're going to actually liquefy you. It's going to be quite a painful process. You're probably going to feel like you are dying, because you kind of are. Your old ways are dying, and now you must be reborn. And in order to be reborn, you have to actually struggle and fight your way out of this cocoon, and you may not make it, and we're not able to help you, because if we do, then you'll never actually be able to fly. So we just kind of have to sit there and watch you. And it's like, wait a minute, what? That wasn't in the fucking brochure. That's not in. It's like, wait a minute. And it's like, everybody wants the transformation, but nobody wants to go through the liquefying process. Nobody wants to go through the struggling to get out of the cocoon process. And I'm like, this is probably why sometimes I would suck a little bit on some of my sales calls, because I could feel some of the people in talking to them that they were nowhere near ready for a transformation. They thought they were, but they were not. And it's like, oh, okay, I can take you through this, but it's going to be painful. And oftentimes I was a little too honest. But the ones that I am honest with and that I can actually say, this is going to be a challenging process. It is going to take everything that you have within you to be able to make this transformation. But what I can tell you without a doubt is that when you get to the other side of that transformation, the pain is worth it. It's kind of like, nobody would have kids if they actually knew the truth of what it takes to raise kids. Nobody would, do a lot of the things that we do if we knew the amount of work that actually goes into it. So we kind of have to tell ourselves some delusions, some lies, or whatever to be able to do it, right? That there are hard, challenging times, but that doesn't, it's through those hard, challenging times that you get to see the best version of yourself, that you get to see that strongest version of yourself, and you come out on the other side knowing that either, hey, maybe you didn't make the best decisions, but now you're wiser and now you know how to make those decisions going forward, or you did go through that and you're like, you know what, I really crushed that. I was proud of myself for these particular things. Yeah, maybe these other things needed to change a bit, but I'm still proud of the things that I did differently, right? So learning to recognize as we go through that whole butterfly transformation story. But I just thought that was kind of funny because I saw like a bunch of little caterpillars trying to run the other way going, no, it's okay. We don't really want to be a butterfly. We're okay with being a caterpillar. And that's okay. If you're not ready for that transformation, that's fine. So I wanted to talk about healing family relationships, and I'm going to tell a story about when my brother and we went on this trip to Florida together. I was in my early 20s, he was in his late teens, and this was our first time away, taking my car. We were going down to visit our grandparents in Florida. They had a trailer, and so it was just him and I, and we're like feeling all like grown-ups and stuff like that going down for this trip. Now the plan was we had packed up the car and everything, and then we were going to leave in the morning. But then there was storm warning stuff of saying, hey, there's like freezing rain and it's going to get worse over the next 8 hours. I was like, oh shoot, like, do you think we should just go now, right? So we left like late in the evening, 7, 8 at night, and then we drove all night. And then as we went from Ontario, Canada, we went down through Ohio, and we were going, there was a bunch of construction, and on the other side of this bridge, we went under the bridge and it was wide open construction, and there was a lot of wind and it was sheer ice. And it, the car started to skid. I was supposed to be sleeping while my brother drove, and we were going to take shifts. We were just going to drive straight to Florida, right? Just nonstop. We'll tag team each other. Yeah. So the car starts to slide, and he's like, oh, Tina, 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 Tina. And I wake up from a dead sleep, and I reach over to try and grab the wheel, and then I realize what the hell I was doing. I'm like, oh, I can't do that. But it was like a panic kind of thing. And then, of course, he overcorrected, and next thing you know, we ended up in this center ditch. We hit really hard. There was gravel flying everywhere. Thankfully, they had just been doing construction. So that was the start of our journey. And and so we were doing this, and then it's like, oh, we kind of got freaked out. And it was good that we ended up in the center, because if we had gone off to the right, if I hadn't grabbed the wheel and he overcorrected the way he did, we could have went off like a 10-foot drop on the right hand side. There was no guardrails or anything like that, so it was like really scary. And then we were kind of freaked out, and we were like, oh shit, did we just take out the oil pan on the car? And we pulled off to the side of the road, and it's like gravel kept falling out of the thing. And we decided that night, we're like, you know what, after this, I think maybe we should just get a hotel, right? So we stayed at a hotel. And then as we were driving down the whole trip, it was good. We were fun. We had fun down there. We visited my grandparents, and we had spent about 2 weeks together, and it was just him and I. And although we're good friends and we like to hang out and everything, on the drive home, it was a bit of a different story. It's like we just kind of kept scrapping with each other for stupid shit, and it was we were just getting on each other's nerves. And so it's like I remember we were coming up, we were going over this like really nice scenery, and I was like, oh, that's really pretty. And I went to take some pictures with like a picture camera and not cell phones. You couldn't do that back then. So I'm like taking a picture and I'm trying to do like a panoramic shot. And I was like taking 4 different shots so I could kind of put them all together. He didn't understand what I was doing, so he pushed the camera out of the way and he's like, that's enough pictures. And I'm like, what? So we just kind of ended up like this, brother and sister just being a pain in the ass to each other, right? And so we didn't talk to each other the rest of the way home, and I think we were only in Georgia. So from Georgia all the way to Ontario, we only talked to each other when absolutely necessary. And even when we got home, there was like a 2-week span where we just didn't talk to each other. We were just like, you go over there, I'll go over here, I've had enough of your crap, right? Both of us were like that. And we still loved each other, but sometimes in family dynamics, if you don't have the right skill set, you don't have the right tools to be able to talk some things through, you may need to give yourselves time out. So that's kind of why I shared that story, is because despite the fact that we did love each other, we were protective of each other and all those kind of stuff, we still got on each other's nerves. So just because it's a good relationship doesn't mean you aren't going to have to navigate challenges. And learning the difference between, is this a toxic relationship or did we just get on each other's nerves and we needed to understand why, right? And there's all kinds of filters, especially with siblings. Even though you grow up in the same environment, you may have been treated differently. Or even if you're in the same room, you experience the situation differently, even though all of you are in the same room together. And understanding that perspective is really, really important. So my brother, typically, he went from having like D's to a C, and then they'd buy him a bike. I had, honor roll student kind of grades, and I had, in grade 5, I had math and French at 100%. And all the rest were like A's and B's, and I was told, when are the rest going to be 100%? So my experience was completely different from his experience. Part of that was because of how the abuser treated us. And I actually got a really good insight by reflecting on this today, is that here, for the longest time, I actually carried a lot of resentment, and I thought to myself, well, my brother's the little angel. He gets away with everything. He was the younger brother, and I was the older, you should know better kind of sister, right? So there were always like back and forth resentments that kind of went on, and because he would get different treatment than I would, and he saw me getting different treatment than he would. So there was sibling rivalry because of that different treatment. I now understand, and looking back, part of that was because the narcissistic abuser that we had at the time that was abusing both of us sexually, I didn't know that was going on with him at the time. He treated us differently because there were different ways it was easier for us to control. My brother was more motivated by, hey, if you take him out for ice cream, or if you buy him a present, or you get him a gift, he was very easily motivated that way. Me, you can't buy me. You just can't. It doesn't matter. However, what did get me was the belief of that I'm not a good student, I'm not a good girl, all of those kind of things, that I'm mean, that I'm bad, all of those things. And I would do anything to avoid proving that to him. And so he would set up different scenarios and pit people against me so that I would behave and I would comply to his wishes. My brother, it was a bit easier, just get him some stuff, and he was a little bit smarter than me. At least he got something out of it. But me, I didn't, right? So it made me kind of look at some of the ways that that inability to receive, because for my abuser, it didn't matter if if he saw that I actually liked something, or I was enjoying something, or something made me happy, he would delightfully take that away as a weapon to wear me down and to watch me react. And I learned to not give him the satisfaction of that kind of reaction, because I knew what he was trying to do. And so it kind of made me a little bit more stubborn, a little bit more resistant to that kind of treatment. So it also tends to make me reactive when, in my adult life, when I see that kind of behavior happening, right? So if I get that feeling that people are playing games or not being forthright or honest about stuff, I tend to get very upset about those kind of things. And sometimes that stuff gets labeled as other things, so one of the traits of autism is, or ADHD, I think it is that reactions to injustice. And I'm like, is it really reactions to injustice? Or is it, no, I've been traumatized, so yes, I'm going to be a little bit more sensitive to these kind of things. There's reasons for it, but putting these labels on and treating that like the problem, it's like, no, the problem isn't the autism. The autism is the expression of the problem. It is the result of the problem. The problem is the friggin' trauma that nobody wants to hold men accountable to, of the stuff that they were doing. Why? Because he looked like an upstanding citizen. Paid his bills, paid his taxes, made good money, had a house, had a vehicle, showed up to work every day, was well liked by his co-workers, all of that kind of stuff. And yet, meanwhile, he would do this stuff to us in the background. So we wouldn't have been believed even if we had brought that stuff up. So I have a lot of issues with, and it's like, since when did being upset about injustices become a mental illness? Like, what the fuck? What, you mean you guys don't get upset about this kind of stuff? The neurotypical people do not get upset about, you see an injustice, and you could just turn a blind eye to it? What the fuck is wrong with you? Like, come on. And you want to label, like, what's the benefit? Who stands to gain from labeling people who stand up against injustice? Who stands to gain from that? I don't know. It's a good question. But I know narcissistic abuse when I see it. And I know what it feels like. So, going back to healing family dynamics, so because of different experiences that you've gone through as a child, my brother, he always looked at me as the smart one, and he put himself down for it. And it was funny because even when we weren't even around, like hanging around together, like during COVID, he was actually going through a captain's exam and he was studying really hard. But I remember him saying stuff like, it would be so easy for me, like, this stuff is easy for me. And I'm like, are you crazy? Like, I'm looking at him and I'm like, I'm the one who dropped out of high school. Even though I had the really good grades, I dropped out of high school. I went back and finished afterwards, but I didn't fit in, so I stopped going. Whereas him, I saw him as much more disciplined, much more organized, and it's like he got steady grades, even though they weren't like always straight A's. He did well in the subjects that mattered to him, but the ones that didn't, he was like, I'll do just enough to get by, right? But I remember when he went through that, and I remember him sharing that, and I thought, isn't that interesting that he still holds that thought process of, well, Tina's the smart one, because that was the stuff that he got told. So his experience was different than mine. I'm looking at him like, well, he's able to finish things, he's able to follow through, and those are also good qualities. So while I may have got the good grades, I always wasn't consistent. So, and I'd walk away from things, right, when they didn't feel right. So these are different things of, even though you have the same experiences growing up, you still filter them differently. And sometimes conflict happens because we're looking at it through different lenses, and we're looking at it through different viewpoints based on our previous experiences. And this can happen in your personal relationships. It also happens, you need to understand this, when you're in a work environment too. That what is normal for you may not be normal for somebody else. So it's a matter of starting to understand if somebody has a different set of beliefs than you do, and they value things like, I had a coworker this one time, and we were at a conference, and she was pathological about being on time, to the point where it was so terrifying for her that she would not walk into a room if it showed up like a minute late. That was just, and I'm like, you're going to miss the entire presentation because you don't want to dare risk walking in where somebody might go, oh, she was a minute late. Who gives a fuck? I'd rather go in 5 minutes late. Go ahead, scowl at me. I don't give a shit. I'm here to learn, and I'm here to understand what's going on. And if you want to get your knickers in a knot because I showed up 2 minutes late, what the hell's wrong with you? Like, honestly, you don't even know why, but you're mad? Like, just understanding and putting that in the proper perspective. It's like, don't be unreasonable about stupid stuff, right? It's like, to get that upset. That being said, I need to understand, what was it that caused them to believe that coming in a minute late is so disrespectful? Like, what kind of abuse must they have gone through in order to be that rigid on that belief system that it validates their need to put somebody else down for not believing the same thing that they do, not having the same experience that they did? And I watched this, it wasn't just done to me, right? Because a lot of times I knew who I was dealing with and I just didn't want to. So you pick your battles, right? So I'd show up on time or early for some things. If I knew that a particular person that was really stressed out about those kind of things. Same thing with the friend that I knew she was very militant about being on time, that she wouldn't go into the room. So I could choose to belittle her or make her feel bad because she thought that way. Or I could say, you know what? I understand that this is an issue. I don't really understand this issue. To me, it's not a big deal, but I see that it is a big deal to you. Therefore, I'm going to make sure that we show up early. I'm going to make sure that we get to the room on time, we get a seat, that you're comfortable, that everything's good, because this clearly is a trauma issue for you, that it's that important, right? So just because you don't share the same beliefs that somebody else has, that you have different experiences, or maybe you had the same experience but you have different reactions to that experience based on the previous filters that you are processing that through, right? So, and knowing, when you understand that and you understand your own stuff of what it is that you need for yourself, then you are able to process your own emotions to get yourself in a place where you're not in a state of fear. Because if you're in a state of fear, you're more likely to react and react negatively. That escalates the issue rather than de-escalates it and adds love to the situation, right? So by me providing that extra support and showing her that I see this is really important to me, important to you, and she knew that it wasn't important to me to be on time. She knows that, and it twists her up just knowing. It's like, if she's not 10 minutes early, it's a problem, right? So understanding that was important to her and providing her that support allows her to feel calmer and feel validated. It's not that I agreed with her, but I gave her accommodations so that she felt more comfortable. So I poured love into her so that she didn't feel so fearful. Okay. The same thing happens with our relationships, family relationships. So you can choose not to agree, but you can still recognize that this is important to somebody else, and you have to filter your own self. Can I do this? Can I give this person support? Can I give them what it is that they're asking for without becoming resentful about it? That's usually the guideline that I use for myself. If I can do this without expecting the same kind of reciprocation back, then I know I'm okay to move forward and give to that person, whether or not they actually give back to me. If I can't answer 100%, they don't have to give me a damn thing, I don't need anything back from them, then I have to look at myself, because I have some sort of, I don't want to say agenda, but some sort of expectation that, well, if I do this for them, then maybe then they'll do X, Y, Z. And sometimes it can be really hard because we're not fully honest with ourselves about what our expectations are. And we don't want to say that so directly. But you'll know if you messed up, if afterwards they didn't do something that you expected and you find yourself pissed off now. You're resentful because it's like, well, after all, I did all these things for you and now you can't even do this one thing for me. See, that's where you know that you had some sort of expectation there, that you had a tie there, and that set you up for resentment. Hey Ben, hey Peter, good to see you guys. Welcome back. Paula. And Mark, I see you there too. So understanding these things that are going on can help you prevent being resentful about things. Because expectations are premeditated resentments, so especially unspoken expectations. And oftentimes when we do things for others, we don't implicitly or explicitly state, I'm going to do this for you so that you do this for me. Why? Because sometimes we're like, oh, well, if I say that, then they think I'm only helping because of these things. Maybe you might hope for something. It's like, well, I'll help you move. And then when it's time for you to move, they don't actually help you. And then it's like, are you mad now? Are you mad, bro? So if you are, then know that you had some sort of unwritten expectation. And that happens a lot in social situations, right? It's like, well, if I do these things for you, then you should do these things for me. And when they're not returned in kind, that's where we can get ourselves into trouble. Okay? So knowing that, you can prevent a lot of issues from happening by addressing them up front, checking in with yourself to say, why am I actually doing this? And I had to catch myself a few times. And if you find yourself resentful and you didn't communicate ahead of time, knowing that you have to take the hit for that, it really sucks, but it really holds you at a higher standard, a higher level, knowing that you could put all of this stuff in and get absolutely nothing out of it. And that is very similar to entrepreneurship. So if you are going through that and you are practicing unconditional love with your family members, of when you give things, I check, is it for free and for fun, expecting nothing in return? That's how it's like, if I can do that lovingly, then I know that I have no expectation, right? Now, it doesn't mean that you're not human, and sometimes you're aware and you're kind of think, okay, well, you know what, I did these things and this isn't being reciprocated. And you might find yourself a little bit, well, I'm disappointed, or, I wasn't really fully expecting, but at the same time, I thought this was a two-way relationship. At that point, you're not allowed to get resentful about it, but you do need to look at it of whether or not you want to continue on with that same pattern of where you're giving and not receiving. Because if that's the case, then you have to know that that's the kind of relationship, and maybe that's enough for you that you're okay with keeping that in your life because you still want that person in your life. But maybe if you find yourself getting resentful over and over again, you may have to make different decisions so that you don't keep getting the same result, right? Because that's the definition of insanity, is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. So when we realize, hey, you know what, I really thought this was going to be a little bit more two-way, you also have to be open, if you're going to open up that dialogue, that they may come up with a whole bunch of things that they were resentful of and didn't tell you about, right? So you may, in your process of trying to heal your family dynamics, shit might get blown out of the water first, but that's okay. If you really value the relationship, being able to hear that through, not react negatively when that happens, take it back, take the feedback, and kind of go, okay, that's the stuff that happened in the past because whatever reason of whatever was going on, and then being able to understand that for going forward. It's like, okay, well, how do we move forward from here? Because beating a dead horse of what happened in the past isn't going to actually help you with being able to heal the relationship. Now, this is going to require a great deal of emotional maturity on your part to be able to take that feedback and criticism. It's very easy to fall into the, yeah, but I wouldn't have done that if you hadn't have done this, and you said this, so I said that. One good rule of thumb is when you're expressing yourself and you're telling somebody what's been going on, stick to I statements. Remove the word you from the situation altogether. I feel this. Somebody can't argue with how you feel. Now, your feelings might not be facts. I feel like you don't actually care about me. Well, maybe the person does, and the way that they're expressing it doesn't resonate with you. It doesn't, speak to your love language or whatever, right? Whatever it is that at the end of the day, you don't feel loved. And that's okay. They can't argue with that piece. But if you go into and say, well, you did this, so that made me feel. No, that's a good way to fight, because now they're going to argue the point of whether or not they intentionally made you feel a certain way. And then the argument becomes about whether or not it was intentional rather than how you actually feel. So it becomes a subtle attack that somebody needs to feel like they need to defend against. So we have to be careful when we're expressing how it is that we're feeling when we're talking about the situations that we've been through, the stuff that we don't like. And I found what works the best is to say, I feel this particular way. When this thing happened, I felt this. It's not attacking them. It's not saying they did it intentionally. It's not saying they're a bad person. And then you can also, if you know what it is that you want, then it's always good to provide that solution to say, you know what, when this happened, I felt this way. What I would like next time is before you borrow my thing, you ask me permission before you do that. And then they can say yes or no, or okay, that makes sense. I understand why you would feel that way or whatever. And the other thing is you may explain things 100% perfectly reasonable, and they still get defensive because their emotional maturity might not be at a level that yours is at, and they might be reactive. And what you need to do is allow them the space to feel what it is that they feel, however they feel it. They might be angry about it. They may need some time to cool off. It's just like my brother and I, after the Florida vacation, we needed the 2 weeks apart. After that, we were great. We were playing video games again, shooting the shit, all kinds of goofy stuff that we did, right? Go to the movies. But until then, we needed some time out. We needed some space apart because we were just getting on each other's nerves. So, even in the best relationships, you need that space, and understanding when you yourself actually needs that space so that you can take it, rather than, you know, continuing doing the same old and just showing up because they need it, right? Or that you feel obligated. If you find that you're doing stuff because you feel obligated, that is also another good signal that maybe you need to reevaluate that whole situation of, you know what, why are you not, because what ends up happening if you do things out of obligation that you feel like you have to, you're setting yourself up for resentment because that's an expectation. That it's like, well, I'm doing the right thing. I'm showing up and this is what you're supposed to do. And you're trying to prove a point. And when somebody else doesn't share that viewpoint, you're setting yourself up for resentments for down the line. So understanding our piece of it, what we're comfortable with, focusing on our own emotions rather than reacting to other people's emotions, because they may be doing it for whatever reason. They may have it in their mind of a certain thing, and allowing them that space to deal with that emotion is important as well, right? Because, I mean, there were times that I was just doing things and my brother took that in completely different ways because of the situations and the filters that he ran things through. Same thing with me. I took things a certain way because of the experiences that I went through, right? So my brother tends to value things a lot more and people not so much. I tend to value people more and things not so much. So we end up having some conflicts because we see things from different angles, different perspectives, right? And it's not right or wrong, because I mean, there's times I look at him and I'm like, geez, I really wish I could do that. I need to be better at that. And he can look at me and take that softer approach. So we gain things out of the differences between each other. And it's not so much about trying to change each other, that you have to be like me or I have to be like you. It's a matter of like, well, what's the benefit of that belief system? What's the benefit of seeing it from that perspective? What's the benefit of doing it in that way, right? And there's pros and cons to both sides. Most stuff is a dichotomy, and it's not black or white. You know, it's not a binary decision. So understanding that allows us to have more flexibility in how we relate to others, whether we're trying to heal a family relationship, a coworker, or just a customer service complaint. Really come from a place of seeking and understanding, making sure that we're in a good space ourselves, and managing our own emotions through that is a path to being able to heal any broken connections. Okay, so guys, I hope that was helpful. If this is your first time joining in, I will be putting the replays up on my YouTube channel. If you want to go over there, it's Coach Tina B 125. Have you gotten that issue checked out, Tony? Your wife complains you spend too much time on the toilet. Is she right? What is too much time? Do you take your phone in there? Are you scrolling through social media? Is that why you're on there so long? Or do you have a health issue that's causing you to stay there a little longer? All is possible, right? But quantifying, understanding what too much time is and what too much time isn't, and why that bothers her. Is it because as you're going out, she just gets in and out less than a minute, whatever. Okay, yeah, so you have some health issues there, right? Yeah, it's hard to understand, right? But I'm pretty sure it's not because of that particular thing. It's of how it is actually affecting her, and trying to understand the emotions behind it. Oh, it's from gallbladder surgery? Okay. Yeah. The thing is, it's not that particular situation, and I think, thank you, Peter. I think a lot of times what it ends up being is more the emotions, and trying to understand the emotions of why she finds that upsetting. And maybe she's embarrassed because she has to talk with the company that's there or something like that, or there could be other reasons of what's going on for her, that she's taking that personally when it's more of a factual thing. And oftentimes what men end up doing, they tend to argue about the factual stuff and not look at the emotional stuff. So it ends up being a situation was like, well, I can't friggin' help it. I've had gallbladder surgery. What the fuck's your problem? Right? Does that kind of sound maybe a little bit right? Right? So it's not about the actual situation. It's something that's going on within her that's more emotional, that's affecting her, that she's taking it personally, and getting to the root of that, and understanding why that upsets her and getting her to open up around that. But if you just argue the point of whether or not, well, I've had surgery, so there's nothing I can do about it, and you might be 100% right, but I love this expression, you can be right or you can be happy. So being right often ends up alienating people from us, and we're not able to connect, because usually when somebody is having that kind of a reaction, it's fear, it's false evidence appearing real, it's emotional, it's not supposed to make logical sense, right? You offered to let her in if she's feeling lonely. Well, that's very generous. She may not want that, or maybe she's got a fear that you're doing something else in the bathroom, right? That you're, talking to somebody. Who knows? Get her to open up and talk about what it is that is going on for her to help her feel more comfortable. Maybe she just doesn't like it because you're wasting time in there, and she wants to watch the TV show and you've been in there 20 minutes, half hour, I don't know, whatever it is. And she's having to wait, and she wanted to do something else. So now she's feeling annoyed and disrespected, and that you're not taking her feelings into account. So it could be something simple, but I don't know for sure, talking with her and asking her, what about it bothers you when I'm in there so long? And she may not always be able to articulate, and maybe sometimes it doesn't bother her, but the times that it does, it's trying to understand what's going on behind it. Maybe it has nothing to do with how long that you're in the bathroom. Maybe it has to do with the fact that she was pissed off that you didn't do the dishes or something like that, and she had to do them. And this just became one extra thing, and so she flips out about that thing. So, yeah, I know women are complicated. This is why I tend to deal with men a lot. But it's the emotional stuff, and when we understand the emotions behind the behavior, it prevents things from escalating, and you can actually help her open up, and oftentimes it won't even be an issue for her. It's the emotion behind it, and when you address that and she feels seen, she feels heard, she feels understood by you, it's probably not even an issue for her. And she'll soften up, and then she'll be like, oh yeah, take as long as you need. And you'll be like, what the fuck? Like, do you want, like, one time you say it's too long, and now you say it's okay? Which is it, right? And you feel like you're going crazy sometimes. Am I right, Tony? If it makes you feel any better, on the woman's side, we drive ourselves crazy. So I hope that was helpful. And for those of you that are new to my channel, I do come on every night, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, to talk about certain topics. If there is a topic that you would like me to cover in dealing with happiness, sometimes I'll talk about personal stuff, sometimes I will talk about business stuff, because even if you yourself have not been through a traumatizing childhood like I did, you may have somebody on your team that has been through this kind of stuff, and they don't know, and they also don't show that they've been through things like this, because nobody would have suspected that the stuff that I've endured throughout my lifetime. Fortunately, I've done quite a bit of therapy. I've done a lot of healing work to be able to get me to a place where I'm semi-functional most days. But so understanding how to notice that, how to support somebody through that, and how not to be reactive and cause more damage is really helpful, especially in a business setting, because I can promise you that there's people that you work with that have been through certain things and have certain reactions because of what they've been through, and they may or may not have actually done some healing work. So if I can help bring awareness to this, especially in a work environment, to help people, because I think we spend a lot of time at work, then I'll have a better chance at helping a million people heal past trauma, be aware of it, and to create environments that promote health and healing and understanding. And that, I think, will actually make the world a much, much better place to live in. So, guys, with that, it's been great talking with you again. Thank you for the newcomers. Thank you for all the likes and shares. Don't forget, go check out my YouTube channel, subscribe, comment, like. It helps boost the algorithm, and I really appreciate you guys, and we will see you again tomorrow. Have a great day. Enjoy the rest of your Valentine's Day. Bye.